Hello everyone, my name is Gönül Eyüp and I am a student from Eskişehir Osman Gazi University and my department is English Language Teaching. So today's topic is Introduction to Classroom Interactions. Let's start. At first I'd like to mention that all the information was taken from this site, the Penn University of Pennsylvania, PennX, and our mentor was Betsy Reims, Professor of Educational Linguistics at University of Pennsylvania. So now we can start with the first topic. Why study classroom interactions? First, looking carefully at classroom interactions builds mutual understanding between teachers and students. To get students to make meaning out of that material is much more challenging than simply talking at students. So at first there will be a mutual understanding between your students and yourself. Then we can also say that not only talking, but also trying to find out the material is really important at this topic, because here are the interaction in classroom that happens between teachers and students with the other students as well. Okay, let's continue. The Brazilian educator Paulo Freire he says that teachers should talk with rather than talk to our students. So it is much more important to talk with students and not talk to students. So talking with students is more like having a conversation with them, less like lecturing. To engage in that type of a lesson, a teacher also needs to be able to find points of connection with those students. So we can say that talking with students is much more effective than talking to. And talking with is like a conversation. And believe me, students are likely to make conversation than just listen to a lecture. And also it can be really hard to talking with because there must be a connection, points of connection. There must be one point that everyone can talk about. So everyone will be in conversation with these topics. Then also talking to and talking with. We said that, but talking with is a much more personal and challenging endeavor than talking to. So we said that talking with is much more effective than talking to students. This can be especially challenging when students come from different backgrounds and have different social histories than their teacher. So there is also the challenging sides of them, because everyone have different backgrounds, so find topics that everyone in it can be really hard again. Then we have talking story in Hawaiian classroom interaction. It's one of the examples on this course. Catherine and Alice, for example, in their studies, they studied storytelling in Hawaiian schools, and found that native Hawaiian students engaged in storytelling in a distinct way. So talking story had initially been interpreted as misbehavior by non-native teachers. Typically during reading lessons, Hawaiian children wouldn't answer one at a time, but seemed to all want to speak at once. Then we have as our researchers write, as a result, teachers spend a great deal of time not in teaching reading, but in trying to get the children to understand the rules of interaction. So in a sense, then the subject of the lesson become management, not reading, because the teacher and children had such different ideas about how the participation in the lesson should be conducted. Then also we have Sarah. She spent a career studying what she calls academically productive talk in classrooms. In one of her initial studies on sharing time, she found that in an ethnically diverse classroom, students whose storytelling styles matched those of their teachers were seen as doing well, while those who told different types of stories were progressively excluded from discussion. So again, there will be the same topic for everyone, so the discussion can go. Then we also can say that these studies in classroom interaction have shown precisely how examining points of difference can build mutual understanding. By targeting specific features of interaction, like talking story or sharing time, teachers have been able to reconceptualize deficits as differences and differences as resources for learning. So we can go on. Studying classroom interaction in your classroom. At first, we must know that each classroom context is unique. So every classroom has their own backgrounds. They are all different from each other. We must know that. Then we also can say that it will equip you to understand individuals and their unique ways of interaction. So not all classes interact in same way, and not all your students also interact in same way. So there will be equipment of understanding these individuals. And also learning and avoiding the dangers of stereotyping based on general categories, because every person is unique, so you cannot just stereotype about them. And also it can lead to more productive and inclusive interactions, because everyone, again, they are unique, so there will be very productive discussions, for example, and also because they all have different backgrounds, their interactions will also show you differences. They will be different. And also to enhance your own love of teaching. So all this uniqueness, all this understanding, they all the way of your teaching. So if you love your job, your students will also love you. How we set action and reaction. It all depends on you. So now let's ask to you, what will you do? For example, do certain students create problems in your class? What will you do? Are certain topics difficult to talk about? What will you do? Are you curious about how students are problem solving in small groups? What will you do? I really want to hear your answers. What will you do in these different situations? So please let me know in comments. So now let's look at this chart. Why study classroom interactions? Why study classroom interaction? Rank your reason from 1 to 6, with 1 being your most prominent reason for studying classroom interactions. For example, improve student achievement. Is this prominent reason for you? Re-engage professionally. Is this? Understand diverse voices in my classroom. Connect my teaching to broader goals of human development. Public research about my own teaching, or other reasons. You can, again, let me know in comments, so I will see what is your answers. And my answers you can see here, the dark ones as improve student achievement as 2, re-engage as 2, understand diverse as 1, connect my teaching as 1, publish research about my own teaching as 3, and other as 4. Now, patterns patterns in classroom interactions. The first one is turn taking. Turn taking patterns is the initiation, response evaluation sequence, or IRE. For example, turn in IRE sequence. For example, initiation and response evaluation and feedback. Let's start. We have a typical speaker talking turn. Can be a teacher and students. So now, for initiation, we have a teacher who asks, what is 2 plus 2? The response the students give is 4, and then the feedback from teacher is good, yes, 4. So what we are expecting there? At first, teacher asked the well-known question, for example, as what is 2 plus 2? Who is Einstein? The questions that we know the answers, and the answer is basic, and the question is basic too. But after the answer, teacher should give a feedback, and a good feedback, such as, well, you're doing well, is it good? Yes, this is the right answer. So the answer is known and the question is easy. So here the main topic is the feedback from the teacher. So this is turn-taking interaction. Then in the second we have question types. At first we have two question types, such as non-answer questions and open-ended questions. So in non-answer questions we have test questions, display questions, convergent questions, and guess what I'm thinking question. The last one is about the teachers. In this non-answer questions, there is a one right answer in the teacher's mind, and it's become like, guess what I'm thinking. So children guess what is my answer and give the right answer, as like that. Then in test questions there is one correct answer, other ones is not meaningful. Then we have open-ended questions. So there is no right, there is no wrong, there is only your thoughts. So a teacher can ask you, what do you think about the weather? So there is no right answer, such as, oh, it's good, it's sunny, because the teacher do not answer about. Let me give you another example. How do you find the weather is an open-ended questions. What the weather is today is a non-answer questions. Because if it's rain, everyone will say, it is rainy. But when you are asking, how do you find this weather? Even if it's rainy, students will answer like, it's good, I find it bad, I don't like rain, I really like rain, I really love walking in the rain. So these types is open-ended and also known as answer, where the answer is known by everyone. Then we have contextualization cues to describe the non-linguistic features of communication. So not everything in communication is about linguistic, is about talking. Sometimes it can be our tone as well. For example, here, the two sentences is all great, but the difference is how we spell that. For example, if I say, oh, great, and when I say, oh, great, can you feel the difference? At first, oh, great, my tone is lower, my voice is lower, so there is, it gives you the idea that I don't like something, I don't find it good or bad, for example. But in the second, oh great, I'm raising my voice, so I really like the idea, or I really appreciate the idea, and things like that. So not everything is about speaking, it's also about our tone. Then we have narrative, telling a story. So here is the classic narrative arc. At first we have an exposition, then the rising action, here's the climax, then following action and resolution for our story. For example, in this example, you can see the rising action, the climax, and the resolution. You can read it as well to understand what the idea is. And we were talking about telling a story in the first weeks, how I remember. So if you're curious, you can go and watch. Then we have participation structures, ways of arranging verbal interactions with students. So now we are in interaction with our students. How we can do these interactions? Well, in a group check-in, or small groups, or whole group discussion, or individual quick writes, or group sharing. So the main factor is groups. You can divide them into small groups or make a big cool group discussion, and you also will be in that discussion to create the interaction with your students. So in these photos you can see them with the small groups and the whole groups. Then we have context and classroom interaction. So let's imagine that you're a teacher and your students ask you, what did you do this summer? How do you like your current job? Are you single? How would you answer these questions? And is this the right way to answer them in a classroom? Maybe you can say no or yes, but these answers different in the context. For example, if you're talking with your students about your real life, their real life, so to get the question as are you single, it's can be okay in that situation. But if you're teaching them about the Ottoman Empire, and in 1 minute one of your students asks, are you single? It wouldn't be right to answer this question in that topic. So everything depends on the context. Then we have the context and classroom interactions, such as the unique ways we speak in classrooms, because we always speak different in classrooms, depends on the topics and depends on the students as well. Then we have different contexts within a single classroom. We said that every single classroom is unique, so you also should speak different in these classrooms. Then the relevance of context outside the classroom. So you speak one way in classroom and you speak in the other way out of the classroom. And also we have creating new context for learners. So you are also a creator. Then the self in classroom interaction. How does your language change when you enter a classroom? So here you can also tell me how it depends. For example, are you talk more loudly than usual? Are you talk more than usual, or you use more formal language than you do at home, or you use less formal language than you do at home, or you use different language than you use at home? You can answer them. And now let's move on to the next slide. The individual in classroom interaction. So teachers and students have different ways of communication. They are from different generations. They have multiple language backgrounds and multiple countries of origin. And also people who participate in a wide range of internet communities and social media. So we can say that sometimes it's really different to make to get in discussion with your students because they have a different ways of communication and you do also. For example, you're from different generations, so you cannot go with them. For example, now they're really in social media and they learn a lot of things from there, and they have their own memes and all their own jokes. So sometimes for teachers it's really hard to understand what is their jokes, what is their memes, what are their memes. So teachers should have a really broadened mind, and also try to participate in their discussions to understand what her students like or dislike, in what they are really interested. These things actually really important in interactions, because the teacher is an individual and students also. We must notice that. Then we have another slide. So communicative repertoire as the collection of ways individuals use language and other means of communication like gestures, dress, posture, accessories, or to function effectively in the multiple communities in which they participate. For example, two students or teachers cannot enter the class in the pirate costumes, right? They must wear the dress that are allowed to wear in classrooms. And also the posture, how do we sit, how do we stand up, all these things, it really tells about a lot of things about us as a student or as a teacher. And also the gestures and the posture, again, posture of the teacher. If teacher sits like that, telling stories like that, do the students listen to this teacher? No. So teachers should also sit correctly, talk correctly, and use gestures a lot to interact with students, to get their attention, and to show that I am a teacher. Now, communicative repertoire in classroom interactions. At first, correctness is secondary and communication is primary. So the point here is not the correctness, not the use of a good grammar, communication. This is the thing that we must focus on. It is communication, because our students do not use the grammar a lot in their real life, for example, but they will communicate. Every second, every minute in their life, they will be in communication with other people. So it is our problem, it is our point that we must taught to them. And repertoires emerge and recede in different contexts also. And accommodation is not always equitable. Language is a sub-feature of communicative repertoire. How we said before, we have gestures, posture. So language is not the one feature of communication. Then development occurs through growing awareness. And also repertoire elements are often used in a messy but meaningful mixed ways. Then behavior in the classroom. In the classroom, do you ever use profanity? Do you ever tell jokes? Do you use social media? Do you call students by their first name? Do you refer to popular culture? Do you use languages other than the official language? Do you wear jeans, wear shorts? Do you sit on your desk or other tabletop? Do you allow students to call you by your first name? So all these things shows your behavior in the classroom. So by these answers, you can find that are you doing well or not in your classroom as well. Then we have repertoire element. For example, how do you greeting your students in the morning? For example, when they enter to the classroom, do you say hi or do you say good morning everyone? This is the point. Then names and nicknames that you use for yourself and for your students. And call your students by their names. It's really the most important point of being a teacher, because you show that you know them. You show that they're important for you. Then we have ways of addressing, popular culture references, and your gestures. How do you use them? Ways of telling stories. So do you tell stories for your exam, for your students? What these stories are? So, and languages. Which language do you use in the classroom? Language that you use at home or the official language? Then pronunciation of certain words. Do you have certain characteristic ways of saying things? For example, I have when I'm saying hocam. Then we have catchphrases or signature words. Do you have certain phrases or words that you use a lot? So these certain phrases or words help students to get an idea about you, to make you other than the other teachers. So they will recognize you as well. So expressing praise and criticism. Do you ever criticize your students? Do you tell them when they do good or bad job? They are the important points. And also we have the communicative repertoire iceberg. For example, classroom repertoire formal English. For example, they use in classroom isn't you as a plural, but outside of the classroom they use informal English such as ain't, y'all, profanity, etc. Their Spanish, Arabic, French, popular culture, texting, inside jokes. So this is the important point because in the classroom you're a different person, and outside of the classroom you're also a different person. So you should follow this line and do not step out this line. So now let's move on to the next slide. So adjacency pair in classroom interaction. What is adjacency pair? A two-part interaction sequence in which the first part, for example a question, is produced the expectation for the second part, for example an answer. So shortly, if one person says something, another must respond. Then adjacency pair types, for example greeting and greeting. For example, teacher says good morning everyone, and students replied as a good morning because they are an answer that they should give. Then question and answer. For example, teacher says, is today Friday? And the student responds as a yes. Then invitation and acceptance. Would you like to read text? Would you like to read next? Sure or not? Assessment and disagreement. This is a beautiful short story. And the student replied as I thought it was creepy actually. Then apology and acceptance. Student says, I'm sorry, I'm late. And teacher replied as that's okay. We started late today anyway. Then someone's an acknowledgement. Teacher says, John. And John said, yes. So adjacency pair means that the first part is produce the expectation for the second part. Then we have finding hotspots in classroom interactions. So one way to begin to develop an understanding of interaction in your own classrooms is by identifying those places in interactions where expectations are foiled. For example, where what we thought was completely expected and predictable doesn't happen. Or those places where typical sequences don't unfold as planned. Or where someone fills a typical sequential slot with an unpredictable world or unexpected description that seems off track. So, how we said before, students are unique. So sometimes the things that we planned can go not in the planned way because there will be some expectations and our students would not do this expectations as we expect. So this is the hot spots to catch this unexpected answers, unexpected ways, and be ready for these things actually. Because if one student replied as not as you planned for one question, you cannot just say, you are wrong. The right answer should be that, and that. Because what if students told another right answer? And sometimes you must be ready to tell them why their answers are right or wrong in your mind, because they cannot find what you're thinking there. And that was all for today. Thank you so much. I really think that becoming a teacher is really a hard part of our life, and being a teacher is much more hard than we can think actually. So thank you a lot. I hope that it give you an idea what about the classroom interactions, how they should be, what you can do in your classrooms, and so on. Thank you so much, and see you next time.